Okay, so we'll demo the SharePoint Designer 2013 piece. The next stage on the a level of complexity, if you like, if you want more complex workflows, is to use a third-party plugin. Came to one of our sponsors there downstairs, so it'd be worth having a chat to those. The other competitor in that arena, if you like, would be Nintex. Okay, so again, both third-party SharePoint tools that you can use some workflow with. And then finally, of course, you may just be a developer and you might just open up Visual Studio and start coding directly in your favorite programming language. Okay, so those are the tools that we've got. It's not about the tool set ultimately, it's about the business process and it's about governance. Okay, so I go and see lots of customers because that's my job. I put in Project Server for them and Project Online because that's my job, and lots of them say, I'd like to use workflow. And I say to them, right, where's your business process? Oh, we haven't got one. Well, you can't create a workflow around something that doesn't exist. Okay? And if you think you're magically just going to create a workflow that mimics a business process, it's going to be wrong. Okay, so don't just do workflows for the sake of it. Actually, I quite like talking to people. That's the best collaborative tool there is out there. Okay, going and having a coffee with somebody and getting things resolved that way. However, if people do have processes and they want to automate them, and that's what this session is about, of course, is that you need to make sure they're 100% complete, that they're adhered to all of the time. So if a customer takes a shortcut, if we normally go from A to B to C, if a customer often goes from A to C, but their process doesn't match that, then your workflow is going to be broken because your workflow will always go from A to B to C. Okay? So you've got to make sure that your workflow works 100% of the time. Okay? The successful implementations with workflow that I've been involved with, the customer has already had a paper-based workflow that they've utilized over the last year, 2 years. They've got that slick and they know the glitches in it, and then you can of course begin to automate something like that. Okay, we're not just limited to one workflow. You can have many of them, and we might have different workflows for different project types. Okay, so complex projects might have a much more sophisticated workflow than a simple project, which actually might not have any workflow against it. Yep. So different workflows you can have, and as we say here, it's not an all or nothing implementation. It's not one or the other. You can mix and match certain project types that follow workflow. You can have other project types that follow a different workflow or don't have a workflow involved. But again, let's think about where we are, and part of the reason for implementing something like Project Online is Project Online is about standards. If I have too many standards, actually I just cause confusion in the organization anyway. So I want to have as few standards that will allow me to productively support the business. Okay, so don't try and do too many things. Okay, so that's a little bit about workflows and sort of some of the business ideas that you need to take on board. What about the components? You're going to touch somewhere along the line all of these different items in your Project Online system. So the first one is custom fields. So custom fields are used to gather and display project information. Okay? And in our workflow scenario, we're going to want to select different custom fields at different phases of our workflow. So we have a set of workflow stages and phases, and we'll gather different information at different stages of the project process. Those custom fields are displayed in web parts, in project detail pages, okay, or PDPs. Okay, so we'll need to set up specific PDPs to display those custom fields so we can display them in the relevant portion of the workflow. For those people who are here for my session yesterday, we quickly went through custom fields and PDPs. We also then need stages and phases. So my phase might be design, develop, deliver, finish, or just design, develop, deliver. And then within there I may have some stages, and design might be initial design, pre-production design, factory test design. And then the next phase might have different stages in it. So I'm splitting up, if you like, my project management methodology with stages and phases that I deploy in my organization. So stages and phases are set up in Project Online, and then we wrap all of those around with the workflow in something called an enterprise project type. Okay, so it does get quite complex, but actually there is some logic to it. Yeah, question?
Yeah. I assume you're going to get to it during the presentation, but how are really the workflows connected to the project itself?
Okay, so the question was how are workflows connected to a project itself? Workflows are connected to the enterprise project type. And when we create a new project, we choose the enterprise project type that that project belongs to. Okay, so you'll see it in the demo, but it's a great question.
I imagine that custom columns and web parts can be reused for different project types.
Yeah. So when you set up one web part, it's there ultimately forever to be used in as many workflows as you want. Yes. In different enterprise project types and in different workflows, yeah. Okay. So if we think about a generic process for creating the workflow, what's the first thing we do? The first thing we do is we plan and design it. That's important, plainly. We don't start off with code, we start off with a Visio diagram, for argument's sake, seeing how we're in a Microsoft conference. What does the workflow do? The important piece at that stage is to make sure that the customer signs it off. Okay? Always get the customer to sign something off, because that makes them think about what are they actually doing. Then, of course, we configure Project Online. We configure Project Online with the components in the workflow. So we set up those components that we've identified. I'm then going to open up my workflow development tool, which for me will be SharePoint Designer 2013. And in this case as well, from SharePoint, I can export that workflow into Visio. Okay, so I can keep a copy of it elsewhere. And then I link the workflow into the enterprise project template, which was the gentleman's question at the end. I go and test that, publish it and test it, and then of course I might go back and do some rework of the workflow. Yeah. Okay, so that's kind of the process for creating the workflow. What's our demo workflow going to look like? Well, in our environment, these are our business requirements. Our business requirements. Okay, we're going to implement a phase/stage process. Ultimately, you have to have one of those, but it may just be if you didn't have one, then you would have one phase and one stage. Okay, so it could be something quite simple. When we create a new project, what we're going to do then is select an approver for that project. Okay, so we'll choose that approver from a drop-down list, and we'll make sure that approver then gets an email, and that approver will accept or reject this proposal. Okay, so we'd expect them to do some work. We're not really going to do so much work about that. We're just going to click the accept button. That then approves that proposal to go into the next stage. And in that next stage, I'm going to get some more information, and in fact, I'm going to gather some test criteria. Okay, so again, we're prompting people what data we need to gather at each stage. And I did put something else on there, but it seems to have lost it. If we'll do this, we'll add a number 5 onto the end. If a project is rejected, then we want to set some sort of status to say that the project was rejected, so that when it ultimately completes the workflow, which it will do very quickly once it's rejected, at least I can have a memoir to say that this was actually rejected. It's completed, but it's rejected. Yeah, so that's what we're going to do. So let's go and build our workflow. let's go and have a look around Project Online first of all. Oh, let's just come out of here. So this is my demo Project Online site, or at least one of them. There's nothing too fancy about this. It's a fairly generic Project Online system. Created it a little while back, and it's to do with new product development. So I develop duct tape. Do you all know what duct tape is? Yeah, gaffer tape. Yeah, okay. So that's what this organisation does. And when we develop duct tape, if I just show you, if I click on new projects, we have different new product development types, okay? Some of them for non-EU, some of them are the new products, some are the variants, some are to packaging updates, etc., etc. So I've got multiple product, different enterprise project types. So that's okay. Let's go and have a look at the Project Online components. So if I go into PWA settings, again, I'm an administrator of this system. What do we have? Well, the bits that I'm interested in initially would be things like the enterprise custom fields and lookup tables. So we talked about a couple for this. One was who is the sponsor, okay, or the approver rather. Okay, so I have a field here, it's called approver. It's a project level, so each project is going to have an approver. It's workflow controlled. Okay, so I decide within the phase and the stages when that field is going to be available to me, and it uses a lookup table which actually I've called sponsor. So if we look in the lookup table called sponsor, this is just a field of names. Okay, there's nothing behind any of this. Okay, the sponsor I'm going to use is a guy called Tony Smith, because I've got in my Office 365 environment a user called Tony Smith, Tony space Smith. And Project Online is smart enough to match up these two and then work out what Tony's email is, which is Tony@Office365 applepark.microsoft.com. So nothing super duper about that. So that's how that works. Let's just have a look at this approver field. Again, just so that we can see that. It's the same as I did yesterday, in fact that it uses a lookup table called sponsor, and then the only difference is this checkbox here has been selected, which says behavior controlled by workflow. Okay. So that's one of the fields that we use, and another one is test criteria, which is here. Again, it's the same thing. In this case, it's just a text field. It doesn't have any lookup table associated with it. It's workflow controlled. And at the top, I've got another workflow control field, which just uses a lookup table approved, and that basically says approved or rejected. And yeah, those are the two values. So that's the enterprise custom fields created for my demo scenario. What else do we have in here? We then need to display those enterprise custom fields on potentially different pages. So this is where PDPs come in, project detail pages. So you can see I've got some here, and I've got one called design data. If we have a look in design data, the only thing that I'm asking for here is something called test criteria. So in this PDP called design data, I expose the field test criteria. Okay, so that's how that works. And quite often on these PDPs, I'll put in as much narrative or graphics or other information I can, because this can be quite a complex process for users who've never done this. Okay? So again, as soon as you start implementing workflow, you notch up the complexity of the training a little bit. Okay? You notch up the learning requirements for your users a little bit as well. Okay, so try and put as much information on these fields as you can. So I've got some project detail pages. And then I have some workflow phases and workflow stages. Okay, let's have a look at workflow phases, because that gives us the ability. Let's have a look at workflow stages, because that's where most of the work's done. Good. Okay, now you know what newspaper I read. Could have been worse. Could have been the Sun or something. Login da. I'll edit that bit out of the recording. Okay, so we'll see that. Back into project. It's good to know that it all works, doesn't it? Server settings. Workflow stages. Let's just do this. So here you can see the workflow phases I've got, and note again the naming. I've got 1 proposed, 2 design and development, 3 production, because when I group things and order them, then they come out in a nice way. And as part of each phase, I've got some stages. So I've got, again, naming convention 1.1 new proposal, 2.1 design, 2.2 development. Now in new proposal, then if we click into here, well, we can see it here, but we'll click in anyway. I can say for each workflow stage what the visible project detail pages are. So in each workflow stage, what do I want the user to see? What information do I want the user to have the opportunity to enter? Okay, and some of those could be required fields, so you cannot move beyond this stage until you've completed this data. Yep. So I won't be able to come out of design, the design stage, until test criteria has been completed. Now there's no quality control on what I type in, so I can type in a period if I want. Okay, but you can never get quality control in anything. People fill in project initiation documents and they think that's done, but until somebody's read it and they know that it's a decent project initiation document, there's no quality there. So all we can say is we need test criteria in there, and we're going to have a read-only custom field, which will be the approval. So once we've selected the approval, we can never go, in our scenario, we're never able to change that. Okay? So obviously you might want something in your workflow that allows you to do that. Okay, if we go into one, so let's just click into the design stage. I've not filled out, I've filled out really the minimum on this form, so it has a name, 2.1 design. We put it as part of a phase. We display the workflow stage status, which we'll show you, and then these are the available project detail pages that I have on the design stage. And note that one, which we called design data earlier, and that was the one which just said enter the test criteria of this project. So that's how it starts to build up, and you need to build up all of this data really before you begin to design your workflow. Okay, you've got to have the basis of the data there before you can do anything else. Okay, so we'll save that. So I've got my workflow stages and phases, and you can see I'm fairly simple there. I'll go from proposal to design and development. I'll then move into production. I'll then deliver something. I may cancel something anywhere along the way. And once I've cancelled it, actually, both from delivery and cancelled, it will go into completed. I have a cancelled stage so that I'm then able to set a specific field if I want to, okay? Or leave it in cancelled, because we might want to understand why it was cancelled. As an organisation, we might want to make sure that the project's properly closed down, the resources are reassigned, that we learn something about why did we cancel that project. If it's a new product development project, maybe it's because we didn't understand the market correctly, or maybe it's because a competitor designed something more quickly, or maybe it's because whatever reason, but we may well want to spend some time in there understanding why we cancelled it before we moved into completed. Okay, so that's our workflow stages. What else do we have in there? Enterprise project types, and that's where we'll wrap it all together. But just so that you can see, we can have multiple enterprise project types. So I've got quite a few in here, with some which have no workflow associations with them, others which have other different types of workflow. So I've got NPD version 1, proposal workflow, test 01, NPD, KDS, etc., etc. Yeah. So those are the workflows associated with an enterprise project type. Makes sense so far? There's a lot to take in. Okay. So that's the project online side of it sorted. So let's go and have a look at SharePoint. SharePoint Designer 2013. It's already installed, obviously. Just open it up. And ultimately, all you would do is go and connect to a site. You can see I've got different sites in here that we may well connect to. So the instance I was running in was my PWA instance. So there it is there. So that's the site that I want to go and connect to now. Okay, so we'll go and open up that site. Now it'll go and grab me any existing workflows that I've got. Okay, and we can go and see them here. I've got some globally reusable workflows and some of the site workflows. So those are the ones that we've developed before. But what I'm going to go and do is create a new site workflow. Okay, we'll go and do this from scratch. So there'll be a little bit of cutting and pasting and things in here, but just bear with me. I think it's useful to see the whole scenario and see if we can get it right first time. So, SPC Adriatics 2016, which I think is where we are. We'll just call this demo workflow. It's not displayed anywhere. Now, you've got a platform type. Ultimately, because I'm configured up to project online, it chooses SharePoint 20 workflow dash project server. Okay, so it knows that that's what it is straight away. So we click OK. That's going to give me a blank page on which to develop my workflow. The first thing it says is insert a stage by using the stage button on the ribbon. So if we look here, I've got a stage button. So I can drop that one down and it'll go out to Project Online and say, what stages do you have in your PWA instance? Okay, so I've got all of these ones. So just bear with me whilst I do this. Talk amongst yourselves. Pre-production, full production. Obviously, one of the things about this is I'm developing on a very small delivery cancelled. Very small PC screen. It's always good to go and ask your manager for the biggest screen that they can afford. I always think anyway. So there's my 5 or 6 stages in that we have. Now, the next thing we need to do is what do we do in a stage and a phase, etc. Well, as soon as we start this new proposal, I'm going to put a condition in there. And I'm going to use this condition, including this stage. And this condition kind of wraps up everything below it, and that means we can restart the workflow manually if we get stuck, or if I need to change the enterprise project type or something like that. So it's just best practice to put if project web app starts workflow normally or restarts the workflow and includes this stage, then we're going to do the bit below it. Okay, so that's just a kind of project web app piece. And then I want something to happen. Now, the things that can happen are all of these actions, and we've got lots of those happening. You can see most of them. We've obviously got some recent ones where I'm setting a project field or setting a project stage status or waiting for an event or starting a task process. but you've got all sorts of things listed here that you can do both from a SharePoint perspective and a project server perspective. Okay, so I'm just going to come in and wait for an event. So I'm going to wait for a project event. So the workflow is going to start. It's going to go into the new proposal and it's going to wait for this project event. Which project event am I going to choose? Well, I've got 5 there. I can say, let's wait for the project to be checked in. Let's wait for it to be submitted or committed. And the committed piece is the portfolio selection being committed, moving into projects. Submitted, published, or when project summary information is published. Okay, so the difference between those two is published means you publish the schedule. Project summary just means you publish the high-level project data. So I'm going to wait until this one is submitted, and then once it's submitted, you see I've got this little green button here, I'm going to start a task process. I can just type, just begin to type in, so we'll start a task process. Okay. Says, so wait for a project event to be submitted, then start a task process with these users, and we're going to have an outcome. Okay, so it's not just an email, it's an approval. So which user do I want to start this with? Well, here's where I can go and select from obviously lots of groups on my SharePoint site, which I wouldn't typically use. In this case, because I want to, my workflow process says send an approval rejection email to the approver. Yep. So if I go and add this in, we'll use the workflow lookup for a user, and the data source for this user is, in this case, project data, because it's going to be the approver on the project, so it's project data, and the source is the approver. Okay. So that's how that works, and obviously I could choose multiple users in there, and then we could put a title in there and we'll say please approve or reject project, and then again typically I would put in from the project data the project name. So again, these are all the enterprise custom fields that I have access to. We'll click OK, and then I won't put anything in the description or the body, we'll just click OK. Okay, so what happens is we wait for a project to be submitted, we then send an email to the approver, and we're going to end up with some outcome. Yeah. So that's what happens. Once that's happened, that outcome comes back, then we can decide what to do. Okay, if it's accepted, then we'll go into the design stage. If it's rejected, then we'll go into cancelled. Yep. So let's just do this. We can use the if and just enter, and we can say if value equals value. Well, the value that we're going to have in here will be the workflow variable outcome. Okay, so we're going to select effectively what's come out of here. So if the workflow variable outcome equals approved, then we're going to go to design. Else, we're going to go to cancelled. Make sense? Fairly simple, isn't it? I don't do any coding. It was about 25 years ago, 30 years ago since I did coding, so this is about as complex as most things get, other than a little bit of VBA. So that's what's going to happen in stage 1.1, and stage 2, stage 3 are kind of going to be similar. So what I can do is I can highlight this, copy, put that into there, paste, 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 Control V, there we go. So in stage 2 design, again, I'm going to wait until we're submitted, and then we can approve or reject. We'll go down and we'll put that into there. to there, pre-production, full production, delivery. Okay, cancelled. I don't need it in there. Completed. I don't really need much in there. We may want to again fully close down the project, so we might do that when we're completed. And then again, this transition stage, we'll just highlight that, come in, and I'll need to change this. So if we're approved, we'd no longer go to design, we go to development. Control V. After development, we go to pre-production. Control V. After pre-production, we go to full production of our product. In full production, we go to delivery. Delivery, we go to completed. Okay, and if we cancelled, okay, then we might need to do something else. So again, cancelled, we'll transition to a stage at the end of cancelled. So we'll choose if we cancel, then we'll maybe transition to the end of a workflow or completed. Okay, in fact, we'll transition directly to the end of a workflow, but we'll do some other things in there. So if I take this, if we're cancelled, maybe we want to set the fact that we did cancel the project. Okay, so what I can do is I'll get rid of this start a task process. We'll just come in and set a project field. Okay, so if we cancel the process, once we submit that project in here, we'll set the field approved to, I've got these two values that were in my lookup table. Okay, so approved or cancelled. So in this case, I'll just set it to cancelled. Yeah. I haven't set it to approved anywhere. It's not a particularly good business process I've got here, but obviously that's something that we would build in. And once we've completed something, then we will just go to the end of a workflow. Okay, so that took a little while to build, but hopefully that's worked. How do I know if it's worked? Well, I can click on publish. That will check for errors, and praying to the demo gods, we have none. And once that comes back, if my Wi-Fi stays up, we can then go and use that workflow. So all I now need to do, because I've got all of my workflow components tied together, is create a new enterprise project type with that workflow, and then we'll go test. Now, if it works, I'm expecting a huge round of applause to take the roof off this place. Okay. If it doesn't work, even louder, just make the guys jealous next door. Okay. Come on in. I did watch a guy doing a demo once. He said, I never do live demos because they can go wrong. And I thought, where's the fun in that? You know, anybody can roll a video. That's easy. Okay, so back into Project Online. Let's go and grab and create a new enterprise project type. Okay, SPCA 2016. Do the minimum in here. We'll give it a project ID, SPC 16. For no other reason than that's something new in here. Now, here's the workflow association. So mine was SPCA 2016. So that's a workflow we're going to associate with this enterprise project type. That's the one we've just created. I'm going to put us on the proposal page just because that asks for less information. Just so that we have a nice icon here. I'm going to put this icon on there. And we'll create a project plan with this. I'll have a new NPD template, but I'm not going to worry about project site. So that should all be okay. Just go and check and verify that. SPC Adriatics. So we'll save that. That's our enterprise project type. So everything should be set up. Now we're getting to the test piece. So if we go into projects, let me show you what I've got here initially. I've got my projects grouped by phase and stage effectively, and some representation over here as to when they're being run. So let's come and create a new project, new, and we'll go and find our SPCA 2016 project type. Okay, so it's going to be a new project of this type, which means it will use this workflow. So creating a new project, so NPD, duct tape for the Adriatics. Okay, and we'll just click finish. So that's going to go away and create this project for me. And it will put it in the first stage of the workflow. Slowly. It's getting there. It always takes forever, but of course you only create a new project once every 2 weeks, so it's not really an issue. It's just always an issue in demos and data loading and those sorts of things. My hotel Wi-Fi may well have dropped out.
There's a cable.
I tried to use the cable yesterday, but I wasn't happy with the cable. Let's just see if Firefox is working. Oh, there we go. So, workflow status, it takes us into this page, duct tape for the Adriatics. We can see we've got a couple of project detail page names on here. We can see where we are. We're in the new proposal. There's a whole set of phases out here. But that's kind of where we are at the moment. We can see lots of data around the workflow stages. You can add lots of graphics in here. It tells us when we're in, when we enter workflows, when we complete them, all of those sorts of things. Now remember, our workflow only initiates when we submit or check in this project. I think at the moment, can't remember what we did, but you know, we're currently in progress of that. So what did we ask for? Well, here's the information that I entered initially on the first page, duct tape for the Adriatics, but the proposal data, which I'm exposing at this stage, says, give me an approver. So that's going to be Tony. And on here there's a graphic which tells me what to do. Okay, because people don't necessarily understand this. So Tony Smith, there he is. Okay, so let's just close this now. Check it in, because I want to show you where that project sits in the initial project center. So that's saving and checking in. That takes us back to the project center. Here's my duct tape Adriatics as part of a new proposal. So let's go in and edit that. So under project we can click edit. And you have to imagine that I've done lots of work around this. I've created a project initiation document, I've created a business case, and I'm now ready to submit this through the workflow. Okay, we can still see the workflow status because that's from this button here. It tells us it's a new proposal, etc., etc. But now we'll go and submit that into the workflow. Yeah. Just like yesterday, we'll take 10. Okay. So that process has been submitted. Okay, and if we go into the workflow stages here, we can see that we're starting to fill out this table automatically. So what will happen on the other side? Well, remember Tony Smith? Okay, Tony Smith's over here. Here's his inbox. He's logged in as, obviously, someone up here, Tony Smith. I'm sure it used to tell you when you moused over that, but Microsoft changed things so often. Here is a new task assigned to me. I've got a new task in duct tape for the Adriatics. Okay, so we can go and open that up. Takes me to SharePoint. Obviously, you can do this from a mobile phone, etc., etc. And in the edit item here, I've got kind of a couple of options, approved or rejected. I haven't got time to go through the rejected side, but plainly in a testing environment, you would go through every link in your workflow. So I'm just going to approve this. So that sets that as approved, sets it as 100%, and I'm kind of done with this now. I'm done with Tony. So if I close this now, then what's happened is my duct tape for SPC Adriatics has moved out of proposal into design. I've got project governance. I can't move this into design until my sponsor has approved it, or my approver has approved it. Yeah. If it was rejected, it would come down somewhere down here and would have popped up into cancelled. Okay. So that all works quite well. So what about the next thing? We're kind of beginning to plan my duct tape for the Adriatics. It's going to be a massive market for me. I might have different flags on it. So if it was for Croatia, obviously I'd just have red and white, etc. So my workflow status has moved along from propose into design. Let's go and open up this project for editing. You can see here I've got proposal data. That's the same data we had before. So under proposal data, this is a read-only field. I made it read-only. Yeah, we said we'd choose my sponsor in the first instance. But we do want some design data. My design data is the test criteria. So I'm gathering, please make sure this is waterproof, because we play a lot of water polo in this part of the world. So this stuff needs to be waterproof. That's for design criteria for this duct tape for the Adriatics. That's all okay. We can save that. I might also, at this stage, begin to edit the project schedule. We have a project schedule associated with this activity, because with the enterprise project type, I said use, come on, great, use a particular, okay, stay on field. Let's do it this one. I did click save, I'm sure. I could have a project template associated with a new product development for whatever organization or whatever project type I'm running. So that all works quite well. Again, under project, we would then submit this, click OK, and then Tony will get another email saying, do you approve this, going from this stage into the next stage. Yeah. So that would all work very, very well. So that's okay. Project. So we'll close this off. We'll come into here and into Tony. Here's Tony's new email, just popped up. You have a new task. So our workflow so far is working. You are too kind. And of course, eventually I could go and reject that. Okay. So does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah? Oh, perfect sense. So let's just wrap this up because we are out of time. In summary then, if you come from IT, you think it's all about the tools. If you come from the business, you think it's all about the process. If you're in IT or you're a consultant implementing something for the business, it's about the business and it's about the process. And that's what project governance and workflows are about. Workflows are there to help you ensure that you're sticking to some standard in your project governance. Mix and match. Some projects will have workflows, others won't. Tool set's important. I'm not a developer, but I work with people who wouldn't even look at SharePoint Designer. They'd just go, oh, Visual Studio. Okay, and you say, oh, hold on, we need a process first. Okay, so you kind of end up being the point between the business and the developer, and you stand there arbitrating. It's called business analysis, isn't it, or whatever. Test document, etc. So, thank you very much. Obviously, with your QR code, or go to there, please rank or rate the session, maybe not rank. What I will do is I will stop recording. I generally publish it as a WMV file. Put something on my blog so that you've got access to that. It's difficult to take it all in through one flow. You need to look at this stuff several times.